So you're Rookie of the Year Kirill Kaprizov, and your flow could use an assist. Check into Great Clips. You'll get in and out with a cut that's pure money for less cash. They don't call you dollar bill for nothing. We got you, and you got this. Great Clips, official hair salon of the NHL.
Jeff, the huge news today, and joking a little bit because we know how Blake adopted Nikita Golddoman. He adopted Vasily Podkolzin, and he's going to have another son to adopt with Andrei Kuzmenko signing with the Vancouver Canucks. Your reaction to what is a huge day for the local hockey team?
Well, my initial reaction is this is a win for the organization. It's a win for the city. We know that Kuzmenko did the tour here recently, and I have to, honestly, the fact that he was posting pictures from rooftops in Vancouver where he wasn't doing it on any other stops made me think that he was pretty enamored with what he had seen and clearly what he had heard from the organization. Now,
I'm just glad the sun finally came out for him late last week.
You think of the last few months. It's always like this. Of course, it's always like this.
That's right.
Get used to it. It's great for the Canucks. It's great for Patrick Allvin, who has said that one of the ways he thought he could build this team out faster was to land European free agents, and this was the European free agent this offseason. And again, the idea of playing with McDavid and or Draisaitl in Edmonton, that's pretty attractive for a lot of people.
South Florida, that terrific team, no state income tax, live on South Beach in a big Russian community.
And a team that scores a bunch of goals and plays
tons of goals.
So, good for the Canucks. Whatever the sales pitch was, it worked. They get an NHL-ready player. He's 26. He just turned 26 in February. 53 points in 45 games for St. Pete's in the KHL. And then he had a really good playoff run as well. Almost a point-a-game guy, 14 points in 16 playoff games. And so a ready-made NHL player on an entry-level deal. They add a player, and then the sort of trickle down there is that they get some flexibility. They have options now, whether he just adds to what they've got or maybe he supplants somebody and allows Rutherford and Allvin to make that long-awaited trade that we've talked about, whether it's Connor Garland, whether it's Brock Besser, whether it's Tanner Pearson, whatever the case. I think they've got some options here now that they didn't have yesterday before they landed this player. So all around, it's good for the organization, true to its word about European free agents. I think it's another sign that this group has its hands firmly on the wheel here, and now it sets up for what should be a fascinating next couple of weeks here once we get to the draft and free agency.
Patrick Allvin in particular really needed this as a first-time general manager who had put a stake in the ground about free agents and European free agents especially. As we know, his tenure here in Vancouver got off to kind of a bizarre start because it appeared quite quickly that him and Bruce Boudreau were not necessarily on the same page and are going to be spending the summer doing so when it comes to analytics and structure and systems and practice habits and things like that. That is really in the coaching realm. This is squarely in the managerial realm. Can you recruit? Can you put on a good sales pitch to free agents who have options? And as you outlined, some very good options. So it's an extraordinary development for Patrick Allvin as he tries to get rooted and footed here with the Vancouver Canucks, build the confidence level up in Canuck Nation. It is also a coup for Bruce Boudreau. As our Darren Dreger, our contributor from TSN, of course, Insider, reports that Boudreau was very influential in a meeting that they had with Kuzmenko. Of course, Bruce not only shepherded the career early on of Alexander Ovechkin and had great success, but a bunch of Russians followed there as well, Kuznetsov, Orlov, and some others. Now, Dreger reporting they did mention top six in power play duty to Andrei Kuzmenko. And look, there's part of me that believes that was going to be a foregone conclusion anyways, that he's a good enough player that he's going to play in the top six and that he's going to play on the power play, although it is quite competitive on this Canucks power play as it's currently constructed. And then one other tidbit from the signing, or at least from the photo on Instagram, 96, huh? That's got a nice ring to it when you think of a one-time Vancouver Canuck Russian winger who's wore 96.
Yeah, and Adam Gaudette. But I digress. So you got a couple of Russians that are in the 90s with this hockey club now. Podkolzin 92, and of course there is that tie. Someday we might find out what, if any, role Podkolzin played in all of this, because they did play together in the KHL, but Podkolzin was so young then, and long before Either one of them probably had visions of coming over and playing in the National Hockey League, and certainly not playing together in the same organization. But he's got a comrade here now, and anything that makes Kuzmenko more comfortable, anything that can make Podkolzin more comfortable, hey, sometimes those little things add up to bigger things. And again, I just think this is a good day for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, the player has to live up to his end of the bargain, and you're right. The promise of power play time is interesting because the power play, as constructed with the players they've got on their roster currently, now we know that can and likely will change, but he's not bumping JT Miller or Elias Pettersson off power play 1, and Bo Horvat's become this ace in the middle and the bumper. So Brock Besser would be the only guy on power play 1 because he's not playing the point, and that's Quinn Hughes' job for the next decade. Now, is Miller going to be back? Is Besser going to be back? Those are bigger picture questions. If it's second unit power play time, yeah, like I'm all for beefing up your second unit. And if you can have a second unit that when it gets the opportunity gets out there and can convert as well, that just makes your team that much better. But we know that the second unit, first of all, doesn't get a lot of opportunity because power play 1, those guys generally get 90 seconds, and the hope is that they score and that PP2 doesn't ever see the ice. But when the second unit got out there, even under Bruce Boudreau, still a little bit of a mishmash. But there is definitely a role for this player to come in here and step on to the second power play unit. So I think you can make, as an organization, I think you can make the promise of power play time. I don't think you can go any further than that and say you're going to be on the top unit to start.
Okay, answer me the Bodog poll question, and should note we omitted JT Miller just because, you know, the anticipation that there will be a JT Miller trade. I do think we're reasonably safe in believing Bo Horvat, Elias Pettersson, and Vasily Podkolzin will all be Canucks next season, or feel free to go off the board, Mr. Patterson.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm injecting him into your top line with Elias Pettersson, but everybody that knows this player, that's seen this player, watched this player, they all rave about the motor's always running. And I think there could be a compliment there for a player like Bo Horvat. You could have a couple of guys that, Kuzmenko's not the biggest guy. He checks in under 6 feet. I think he's close to 6 feet, but size isn't necessarily his attribute. It's that he's got this motor that's always running, and then he's got offensive skills to back that up. We know for years that Bo Horvat, the search has been on for him to find regular wingers that can be productive and can help him, and he had a terrific season until he got hurt. I would vote for Bo Horvat. And again, need to see what the roster looks like when they get to training camp on day 1 to start building out a depth chart from there. But just as we sit here now, like I could see the possibility of Podkolzin on one side, Kuzmenko on the other. Horvat might have to brush up on his Russian, but you could have 3 guys that sort of all play that bull in a china shop kind of game.
Lots of good options there for the Vancouver Canucks in terms of where Andrei Kuzmenko slots.